Hi, my name's Sandie. Pre-COVID, I was working at Nottingham City Council in the main offices at Loxley House, commuting there every day from Calverton. And in the end of February, I moved in with my partner Pete. He lives in Carlton, so it was great because it was nearer to work. But it was about that time that COVID started to rumble on the news. It was happening in China, you heard about it. Italy was starting to show signs of being a problem. And I became very nervous very quickly. So I was at work and we're not overly tactile at work, but there's one particular chap who works in major programmes that I've known for a long time, that when he comes to our section, he would always come over and give me a kiss on the cheek. And he walked up to me and I just went, "Clive, no." And he was shocked. And I just said, "Please don't." I said, as much as that's our usual greeting, I am worried about COVID-19. "Oh, I haven't got it." "You don't know, and neither do I." And one or two of the other ladies in our department were getting a little bit twitchy. We were cleaning our desks down, and this was way before anybody really started to think that it was possible that we would get it to the strength that we've got it and had it. But clearly, some people were very blasé, and then some people were a lot more cautious, like myself. So I moved in, I think it was about the 28th of February with Pete, and put my house on the market for rent, which was problematic because it didn't then let, because nobody wanted to move. And so when we came to lockdown, I was stuck in Carlton, as far away from my family. I might as well have been a million miles away, because I couldn't do anything, I couldn't see them, and that was hard. I was given the opportunity of either myself or one of my colleagues going on furlough. We were all working from home, which was quite difficult because none of us had got equipment. We'd got a laptop and a charger, and that was it. So one of us would be on the sofa working and one of us would be on the kitchen table. But then I was given the opportunity of picking some equipment up from Loxley, so I was able to set a much more office-based feel. I've got a large screen and a proper chair, and that made a big difference. But then I had a choice of whether or not it was me or my colleague went on furlough. And at the time I said no to it if I didn't have to do it, because I felt that being in a new house for me, and a new position of my relationship, and I didn't know how we were going to get on. As it is, we've been absolutely fine. We have sailed through it. It's been an absolute dream in some respects, which sounds really big-headed, but you never know when you've just moved in with somebody how that dynamic is going to work when you're out of the house 7 or 8 hours a day. Never mind when you're in there 24/7 for however long it was going to be. So, yeah, it's been quite an interesting time. But actually, they then put me on furlough about 5 weeks later. And if I was honest, I quite enjoyed it. The weather was better. We were allowed at that point to go out a little bit more. And so it did make a difference to have that little bit more freedom to go out for a good walk sooner than the statutory 1 hour that we were allowed. So yes, it has had some good points. Pete and I have become, I think, so much stronger. We were strong anyway, but we are stronger now. And yeah, it's been an absolute gem, really, in that respect.
So to leave this subject till after that, because I suspect this is the one that's going to upset you a little bit. But you said quite pointedly there that moving away from the village and your family, to you it felt like you may as well be on the moon, in terms of you couldn't come over. Do you want to expand on that a little bit, or do you want to leave that subject?
No, I'm happy to talk about it. My family are my world. My sisters we're all three of us very, very independent and live our own lives to suit ourselves, but we know we are always there for one another. And Mum is that nucleus of those three. And so my nieces and nephews are important. Their lives are important to me, and me being involved in their lives is important. So it was a tough decision to move to Carlton, but it is only 20 minutes, 25 minutes drive away. So I had the reassurance that I could still see them whenever I wanted to. But then, of course, to go into lockdown and to not be allowed out the house and not to make any non-essential journeys, which some people may have decided that seeing their family was an essential journey, was an essential journey. But I decided for my safety and everybody else's that it wasn't. And so I didn't drive my car apart from going to the shops, for 12 weeks. I didn't see my mum for, I think, 15 weeks, not face to face. And then the first time I came over, when I saw her, I cried. And all we did was sit in the garden and talk for about 3 hours, about 10 metres, about 10 foot apart we were. So yeah, when we are as close a family as we are, then it was incredibly hard for me to be just 7 or 8 miles away.
Sort of 3 words to describe, 3 words that kind of sum that up, Sandie, what would they be?
Helpless, because I couldn't help Mum the way that I wanted to. When Mum had gone and had her knee operation in the February, I had stayed with Mum. I had worked from home. I had worked from Mum's house so that she'd got that 24/7 support. We'd done it on a rolling programme, but I had the flexibility with my work to work from home at that time back in February. And so I chose to bear the brunt. Not that it's a brunt, but I chose to carry that load as much as I could to help both my mum and my sisters and the rest of the family out. So I'd gone from being almost like Mum's number one for a period of time to being so far away from her and being completely helpless because I couldn't do anything. So that was really hard. As much as my relationship with Pete has gone from strength to strength while we've been in lockdown, I've also felt lonely because I'd lived in Calverton all of my life, pretty much. Moved here when we were almost 3. And so I'd suddenly lost that contact network of my friends, my family and everything. So that's been a little bit difficult as well. But a final word, I'm probably struggling for a final word. I suppose it's conversely, it's the opposite. It is happy. Pete and I moved to a different place in our relationship, and a place that brings me the greatest of joy, and that sounds really sucky, but it does.
Nothing wrong with sucky.
As a family, we had great expectations to celebrate Mum's 80th birthday the only way our family know how, which was together, and making her feel incredibly special and important, and we couldn't do that. So we tried to use technology the way that we could, and my video editing skills, and got everybody to sing little snippets of happy birthday and goodwill messages, and I stitched it all together, and I'm pretty sure I probably made her cry on the day, but I'm hoping it was happy tears. So that was a tough one. Pete was also 60, and we had planned to go away to New York in the April. And like so many people, that's been cancelled. And unfortunately, we're still trying to get the money back on that, which is a bit of a nuisance, but we'll get there, I'm sure, in the end. And then, yes, missing my nephew's 16th, a very special birthday. And also my brother-in-law's 50th, although I did get to see him because that was only last week. So I was able to socially distance, visit and give his present and card. But it's still not the same as having that family meal that we would have at least done to celebrate, as we would have done for all of the other birthdays as well.
The thing that, having interviewed your mum and now talking to you, is clearly what your family has is like a kick-ass fighting spirit to kind of make the best of the situation. So your mum talked a little bit about that. Do you kind of want to talk anything about sort of making the best of it and as a family, how you've come together to support your mum and each other in doing that?
Yeah, I think everybody's had to adapt, not just my family. We've all had to make sacrifices, we've all had to change the way that we do things, and we've all had to work differently and find a way around this to get the satisfaction out of our lives that we need, because your life's been paused, but the clock hasn't. And staying in touch with mum and, FaceTiming my nieces and nephews and chatting to them on the phone and that sort of thing has become the new going to see them. Eternally grateful for technology. Goodness knows what we'd have been like if we'd have had a red phone box on the corner. Goodness me, it would have been awful. All of us would have felt desperately lonely and unhappy, I think, if that was the case. But yes, technology has played a massive part in keeping us in contact and keeping us sane. I'd like to think that community-wise was stronger. I think certainly initially communities seemed to come together online with help groups where people were offering to do shopping and pick up prescriptions for those that were self-isolating. And I think that really showed human nature at its best. So that for me, I think, is probably a big takeaway from this, that actually, whilst we do normally lock ourselves away and keep ourselves to ourselves within our own family units, there's still a real love for people in a lot of the population of Nottingham and Nottinghamshire, and that shows in the way that it's rallied to support and help those in need, from food banks right through to, as I say, just a friendly knock on the door to make sure that everything's okay. I'd only been in my new home for probably about a week, and I was out on the drive just getting some fresh air, working from home, just needed to get away from the screen. And an elderly lady walked past me, and as I would do, good morning. And I finished up chatting to her for about 20 minutes. She told me she lived on her own and she was struggling to get the shopping because her son he lived away. And being a council worker, I knew about the food deliveries that the council were doing. So realised where she lived and wrote her a little note with the golden number contact for the council, and just dropped that in and gave her my mobile number and said, if you need anything, I'm here. And she never rang me, bless her, but I'm hoping that just that little bit of contact with somebody gave her some confidence that she was going to be all right living on her own. And
it's like your mum said earlier, isn't it? It's like she's got the family and everything, but she knows there are lots of people that don't have that. So
yes,
indirectly you probably felt like you were helping your mum.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, because I would hope that somebody would have done the same for my mum had mum been on her own in the village with no family around her. So yeah, I think that's my takeaway, is that people came together. Apart from being able to give all of my family the biggest back-breaking hug that I've ever given them in their life, and being able to spend quality time with them, catching up on those celebrations and those sorts of things, I'd like to see people remember that community spirit as we go forward and our lives get back to a level of normal, because it showed that actually the world has been a nicer place in some respects this last 6 months.
So June, I'm going to give you the same opportunity that I gave Sandie. Is there anything you'd like to ask Sandie? Is there anything that you think you could prod her to contribute to this? Anything you think she's missed?
I don't think she's missed anything. I've been listening to her, and I know it's bothered her very much that she's not been in the village, and I do know that. But you mustn't feel that you've let me down in any way, shape or form, because I don't feel that.
I don't feel I've let you down. I feel I've let myself down.
And you mustn't do that.
Because I wasn't able to do what we've always done, and that is pay the gentleness, kindness and respect back to you that you've given us over. The care, the love and support that you've given us over your whole life.
I supported you no matter what you did, and when you went over to Pete, it was a new life, it was lovely. And then all of a sudden we've got this horrible thing about COVID. And I felt your isolation.
I know you did.
I felt that more than anything. And the one thing that bothers me is that if it's a time of disaster or anything like that, we're not all together. You know, and it's one of my sort of nightmare dreams I have, that I have to get all the family back together again. But you are going to move, and you have done. But you mustn't feel that I felt your pain and your isolation while you've been over there.
I know you did.
Do you want me to stop the video, by the way?
It's your call, darling. It's absolutely your call. I think, had Pete not been the person that he is, I think I'd have struggled more. But he's worked incredibly hard to make sure that that house is my home and feels my home. And I really respect that, because it was a big decision.
The thing that comes across loud and clear for me here, listening to you both, is, in all honesty, when you made the decision to kind of have that new life with Pete in February, January, December, whenever you made that decision, absolutely nobody could have foreseen what was going to happen. And in your mind, 20 minutes down the road, it's nothing. Your mum's here, she's at the end of the phone. So I kind of get where your mum's coming from, really. It was, I'm going to use the word shit, sorry, June, but it's been a monumentally shit situation that we've all been in that nobody could have seen.
No.
And I think we've all just had to do what we've had to do. And if you'd gone over there and left your mum on her own, then I could understand you feeling guilty. But your mum has been in good hands.
She has been in good hands, and when it came to making the decision on who was going to be Mum's bubble, it was an absolute no-brainer for me. It could have been Lynn, but Lynn was working. Elaine was furloughed and still is furloughed. And Mum's always gone to Elaine's for Sunday lunch, and Elaine, we knew once the restrictions were lifted more that Elaine would have the grandchildren over, so Mum would get to see the grandchildren. So for me, it was a no-brainer. But there was, as much as there's no envy in our family, the fact that Elaine got to hug her and I can't was awful.
Sibling rivalry was
it you know, and I've even thought now, you know, there's potential for the numbers to be increasing in the area. And I've even thought, God, do I bring a mask over and give her a hug now? Because if I don't know when I'm actually going to get to do it.
Got one in my bag.
But it, again, like Elaine felt, that, oh my goodness, what could I have done? It's still there. And that fear won't go away, no matter how low the numbers are, until me and Mum have been vaccinated, if that ever happens. And that uncertainty is hard.